All right. Welcome, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. Super excited about the webinar that we've got for you guys today. As usual, I'm going to be your moderator. I am Laura Moritz, the Vice President of Product Development and Implementation for Flentis. I have with me Sabrina Summers. She is our lead client experience specialist at Flentis. And we've got Michelle Eli, who is the Director of Operations at Talent Procure. So today we're going to be talking about CW program net promoter scores and kind of what that looks like. How can we reverse some of the negative scores that we've been seeing for both MSP and VMS? It looks like Sabrina is having a little trouble with her camera. So while she works through that, we'll go ahead and do intros. If Michelle, if you want to just go ahead and give us a quick intro of yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Laura. I really appreciate you inviting me today. My name's Michelle Eli. I'm the Director of Operations at Talent Procure. Talent Procure is a managed service provider. We're about 2 years old, and although we are a little bit younger of a company, we come with a lot of years of experience, almost 40 actually, just on our team, which is really great. Myself personally, I have about a decade of experience. I don't know why a decade feels so much longer than saying 10 years. It's like a bigger impact, but makes me feel very old saying that. But I have, like I said, about 10 years of experience in the MSP space. Really happy to be here and share some of my experiences.
Awesome. Sabrina, let's see if your audio is working. Is that working for you?
I'm not sure what happened to my camera.
Perfect. Yeah, we can hear you. So, and you're back. Perfect timing. Love it. If you want to go ahead and just give us a quick intro of yourself. Oh, I think we lost audio when we got the video. Wait, you're back. Okay. Go for it. You're good.
Let's see. Okay. So I'm Sabrina. I'm the senior client experience specialist.
Oh, we lost audio.
Oh gosh. I'm not sure what's happening. Let's see. Let's maybe just audio for right now. I think that's working best.
Perfect.
So experience in both VMS and MSP sides of the industry. I've managed quite a few big programs, so I have a lot of knowledge on both sides, and my main drive is providing a really good customer experience.
Amazing. And one of the reasons that I'm so excited about this conversation today is this is the first webinar that we have hosted where it's all women. And I love that. And I feel like a lot of the conversations that we have around program management and stuff, like the three of us are heavily involved in those conversations. So talking to you guys feels like just another one of our regular calls, which I love. So I want to kind of start the conversation with like the current state right now. I think I've got some of the data in front of me, and I think VMS is at a -35 and MSP is at -10 for net promoter scores right now. So I just want to kind of set the stage with that information. And then as we kind of talk through the conversation today, we can talk about why is that the case and how do we make improvements on that. So before we jump into that, I just want to call out that we will be doing a Q&A at the end of this session. So if you guys have questions in the audience that you want answered, if they are relevant to kind of the conversation that we're having at the time, we may call them out in real time. But if not, we can get to them at the end and we'll go through each of those questions in the Q&A. Perfect. So I guess let's get into kind of how our companies started working together, because I think that plays into how we service the clients as well. So I think when Denise Stalker and I met like years ago at one of the conferences, I think that was kind of the kickoff to everything. But we became like fast friends with everybody in your organization. I think our organizations really align well, Michelle.
Yeah.
So can you kind of speak to like what that experience was like for you and how important it is for the folks within the organizations to mesh well together?
Yeah, I think that, at first, when we first started, like I said, we've only been here for about 2 years and we needed a good VMS solution. So we reached out to Flentis for a demo and knew kind of immediately that it was going to work for us because they're just uncomplicated and, really straightforward with how the VMS is set up. And the way that they collaborate with us is really just a different level. Like Laura said, we like to call each other besties because we really work well together and we connect often and we share things that are helpful for each side, and so it's really just a great partnership. I think that Flentis's goals and their values really align with Talent Procure's. Although we can support you know all different levels of businesses, big and small, we really are focused on like the mid-market clients because we feel like they've been underserved. And part of that is being able to support their needs with requests to the VMS. And a lot of times a VMS may only focus on upgrades that are going to help the big clients. How are we going to get the most money? That's kind of what we've seen in the past. So having a VMS that is supporting all of our requests is just really great. So I think that partnership is become very strong based on those values and those goals that we have and that we share.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Sabrina, from your perspective, you're kind of on the front lines for us as an organization in interacting with our partners and clients. And so for you in those interactions, how important is that trust between partners and being able to interact and be comfortable with those partners that you're working with?
Yeah, so the trust aspect is super important. And I think that communication is super important between the VMS and the MSPs, just for a partnership standpoint, because having a lack of communication can really destroy the whole program. It can impact the client experience. It can impact the MSP experience. It can impact what the VMS is giving to the MSP and the client. So having open lines of communication and often communication really enhances the ability for us to create a quality product and to work with an MSP like Talent Procure, like Talent Burst, to make sure that we're providing something that is useful to them and is useful to the client as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that you guys have to collaborate on in kind of being this united front, even though you're two different organizations, when you're facing that client, is setting expectations. And I think when we're talking about any kind of feedback or scoring system, being able to set expectations up front and throughout the process as well is super important. And you should almost know what kind of feedback you're going to get when you ask for it based on those expectations that you set. So, Michelle, I'm kind of curious how you manage the client expectations since you're kind of the one that's really interacting with them on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the easiest answer is to, always set expectations early and don't overpromise. That's, the easy answer. But I think it's so important to build that trust early with your clients because it really does set the scene for the rest of your relationship. I've been on a lot of early calls where something said that you promise something that you can't deliver on, and depending on who's on those calls from the client side, they're going to remember that for the rest of their lives, that you weren't able to deliver something. So I think it's so important to not go out there and sell things that you're not able to support. And I think that the easiest way to do that is to bring your partners along early and early into the process. So, for example, the last client that we went live with, we actually brought Flentis in early on those conversations for those discovery calls. And it was so nice to have them hear what the client was asking and also to kind of learn the culture, because I think it's really important. They're not just the back office, the VMS, they're just a software system. They really do need to understand the client to be able to support them in the way that we want them to. So I think it's so important for them to be on those calls early and be able to make us look good too, because we don't know everything. We don't know what the VMS can do and what can come down the pipelines later on to be able to support these goals that the client has. So I just think it's that's the best way to set those expectations, is to bring your partners in early, lean on them for their experience as well, and be able to be transparent on what they're able to deliver and when, so that it's helping the client understand what they can do.
Absolutely. Sabrina, you got anything to add to that one?
I just totally agree. I think that being in those early conversations really gives a better clarity to the program and what the goals of the program are, so we can provide we can provide something that is creative or customizable for this program, and that will help the program to grow later on. And I think that is something that a lot of VMSs don't tend to not do. They don't look for those differentiators early on with the program.
Absolutely. And I think when we're talking about like expectation settings and looking for how can we get creative, things like that. When I first started, the very first program that I ever worked on, my program director always said, perception is reality. And at first that was so frustrating to me, because I'm like, I'm doing the things, and it's like, but if you're not doing the things in the way that the client is expecting them to be done, to them, it's not done.
Right.
And so that setting expectations piece, I think, is just so important and can really make or break a program.
Yes, I completely agree.
So when we're talking about kind of those differentiators, Michelle, what do you guys think are some of those differentiators for you guys, and maybe some of the differentiators for how our organizations partner together compared to some other technology and service provider partnerships?
Mm-hmm. So I would say, all clients they're different, but they're the same. So everyone kind of wants the same thing, but they want it in different ways. So, it may be, how their managers are using the system, and, how they interview their candidates might be different, client to client. Something that came up, I would say more recently, is we had requests to separate the expense workflow from the timesheet workflow. That was something that our client wanted, because it would be easier for them to manage. And so that was something that we shared with Flentis, and they were able to put into production for us. But yeah, I think that those are those types of requests that that our clients have, and it just kind of makes them a little bit different client to client. But really, with the experience that Flentis brings, and having that experience in the MSP space, and us having experience with different VMSs, we know what is what's going to work and what's not going to work pretty early on, and we're able to kind of share that and with the client, and be able to kind of push for things that that will work for them the best.
Yeah. And Sabrina, from your perspective, how does the partnership with Talent Procure, how is it different from other MSP technology partners, and what are some Flentis differentiators in there as well that can kind of help manage that client expectation versus delivery?
I think one of the biggest thing between our partnership is that we have weekly calls that are like a wish list items. So things that Talent Procure has found that may be interesting, or the client has given direct feedback about, or things that are just in the industry that might be something useful in the system. So we talk about those things weekly, and then we bring those things to our product development team, and usually we can implement those within a couple of months and get those things up and running. Like Michelle said, separating our expenses from our timesheets was a big one that the client requested, but it was also something that was helpful for the MSP. So we were ready to get on that, to add that to the system to provide value to both the client and the MSP. So I think that's a huge differentiator for us, is that we're taking all types of feedback, whether it's from the client, it's from the MSP, whatever, to make their lives easier, to make a little bit easier and a little more efficient as well.
And we take our feedback very seriously at Talent Procure. Sorry, Laura. We are really big on communication with our clients and our users. So we do quarterly surveys to all of our managers and all of our workers. We do a weekly client sponsor calls. So we're really gathering that information constantly, because we want to know not only what's not working today, but what's maybe maybe won't be working in the future for them, and things that they want to do. And we want to share that with Flentis. And it's so nice to get on those calls, because everyone prioritizes those calls, both on the Talent Procure and the Flentis side. And it's so nice to have all of those different parties on that call. We can talk through different requests and see, what the priority is. So we prioritize our wish list items, which is a very long list, because we're just constantly thinking of new and exciting things that, might be helpful. And so, they're never frustrated with us when we come to them with additional items, and we talk through them, and we're able to, really focus on what's important for the client. And it's just having that knowledge share is great, because they have experiences with other clients, and we have, multiple clients. So it's just nice to bring all of that together and come up with ideas together. And we also do workshops. So we'll sit down for a couple days with the Flentis team, and we'll really focus on, bigger picture items that can't be completed within a half-hour call, weekly. And so that we can really plan for the future and plan for our future clients.
Yeah, all of those things bring so much value to the partnership and to clients, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I think those calls that we have in that big wish list, and I do want to call out that, like, most of our product development is coming from places like that wish list, coming from that direct client feedback, so that we can build out a product that is useful to our partners and clients directly. One thing that I do want to call out, though, kind of for each of you, that you do really well in that process is, Sabrina, I was talking to, I think, Michelle, you and Denise at CWS, and was just like, hey, how's our team doing? How's our partnership? And I think it was Denise that said, like, Sabrina understands the issue that we're talking about the first time we ask every time.
Yes.
Like, it's not like a tech support. It's like, okay, I've been in that situation. And we always joke in our team that, like, we still have that, like, program management fear in our hearts. Like, we feel like the client is coming after us too. And so we have that, which I think is really helpful. And then, Michelle, I think you do a really good job of managing the expectations for technology as well, even though that's not, like, directly your responsibility to deliver the technology piece of it. You communicate what we talk about effectively, so that they're not like, why is it taking it this long to get it in? We tell you what sprint it's going to be released in, and then you relay that information. So I think that those meetings that we have play a huge role in setting those expectations, and then the client satisfaction that comes after that.
Yes, absolutely. It is so nice to share an issue that we're having with the client, and for Sabrina to completely, and Laura, honestly, both of you, to understand exactly what we're saying. We don't have to share our screen and show you what, problem they're having, or what they wish was happening, what's different. You guys get it. You understand, you've been there, and you don't only get it, but you may have even a different, solution for the problem that we're not even thinking about. So I think probably a lot of MSPs are like, we know exactly what the solution needs to be. Please make this happen. Whereas, this communication being open is so nice because you're able to say, actually, I think this would be a better way to do this. And it usually is. And, it's just such a good collaboration on those calls.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with those wish list items and with issues too, it is huge that we don't always take what the client says as direct feedback. Sometimes we have to analyze a little bit further. We have to think about how. I'm sorry, dog's background.
We love the dog appearance.
But yeah, the client feedback might not always be the best source. So we use the MSP, we lean on them to provide us with what they think that they need. And then we also take our industry knowledge to create a solution that might work for more than one client. It might work for an entire part of the industry. So it is very much about collaboration and communication, because one solution might not fit all. And it's good to work those things out for sure.
Absolutely. And Michelle, you kind of touched on it a second ago of the different ways that you guys collect feedback. Curious if you can kind of just elaborate on that process a little bit and talk about what you actually do with that feedback once it's received. What do those processes look like so that you can ensure that improvements are made if that's necessary, or that you continue what's working?
Yeah. So we actually ask different sets of questions depending on the time of the year. So to the workers and to the managers, we're either asking, how is your assignment going, of course, and how is your candidate working out for you. But then we also ask more technical questions like, are we here for you? Are you getting the support that you need? Is the system working? Are you able to log in and action the items that you need to within the VMS? So those types of questions are what we're asking, because we really do want to know like what issues they may be running into. So with that feedback, we are using that directly to follow up with the VMS, following back up with the managers and the workers if they are having any issues, so that we can get some details on what that entails. So we can really focus on that to get those, get that figured out, because we don't want our managers or our workers or even our suppliers. I mean, I don't want to forget that, we're talking about client experience, but it's very important that the suppliers also have a good experience in the tool, because anyone that's in that tool, if they're not able to action what they need to action, if it's submitting a time card or an expense, if it's, submitting a candidate, requesting an interview, those processes have to work, because they will get frustrated. This is a new system for them. Most managers are not using a VMS often. Maybe they have one temporary worker a year. So they're not used to this, and it has to work the way that it's meant to work, so that they're not getting frustrated about the process. And then they're just not actioning what they need to do. Maybe they're not requesting that interview, and that candidate, is not engaged any longer because it's been, a week and they haven't heard anything. So it's really a big impact on how the VMS works, and and it's a direct impact on how those scores are. Like you were saying earlier, those scores are not great. And, we take that very personally, because we want the MSP to work. We want the managers to be happy with the system and not have issues doing simple tasks. So it's really important that we get that feedback. We share it with Flentis, and, we're able to mitigate any of those issues.
Absolutely. And I think with that feedback, there's, again, room for collaboration there, right? And like Sabrina, from your perspective, we take that feedback and we go to Daniel, our product manager, and talk about how can we make the system better. And we had a conversation maybe a month or so ago about the technology. And part of that conversation was exactly what you just said, Michelle, of how do we build the system for someone who is only going to use it one time? It has to be that type of user friendly, because you're right. A lot of people are in there hiring one person a year, or even if it's once a quarter, if you're only in the system every once in a while, you're not used to it. You're not clicking around regularly. So
Mhm.
that user friendliness drives the product development that we do as well.
Absolutely.
And I think even just thinking about, some of these maybe newer clients that have, their first generation programs, they've never
Mhm.
even heard of an MSP before. So not only is this information and how the suppliers work in the system, how do they work in this plan and where am I getting these candidates from? And they're already maybe confused about the entire program and how it works, but then also they're using a brand new system that they have to
Mhm.
utilize in order to action these items. So it's just a lot of confusion on top of confusion if they don't get the full picture. So it really does need to be, you know, very streamlined for them to be able to use. And we don't want them to have to stop and call us as much as we love talking to our clients. We want them to be able to do it on their own the way that it was made to work. And so I think that that's super important. I always think about, this is a little off topic, but I always think about the movie The Intern with Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's one of my favorites. But she has that online fashion store and they can't Zoom. And she said, no one's going to buy the clothes if they can't Zoom. And no one was buying this item because they weren't able to Zoom in to see it. And they were just logging off and not buying that item. And I feel like I always think about that with our workers and our managers because they go in, they look at their candidates, but they don't maybe know how to set up the interview or they don't know how to, do that next step. And instead of trying to figure it out, they just say, I don't have time. They log out and then they say, I'll look at that later. And so
Mhm.
little things like that can impact an entire process. And so I always think about that because I think it's just so important that everyone is able to move forward with what they log in to do.
Yeah, that's such a great example of just those little tiny things that make such a huge. It should be easy for anyone to open a requisition or to schedule an interview, even if you've never even heard of a contingent workforce before. You should be able to do those things, and I think that's something that our team is really focused on, and making sure it's easy for a supplier to submit a candidate because those get forgotten with a VMS. They just get the scraps of the VMS and people say, oh, that's good enough. But it's something that we're focused on enhancing too, to be able to provide a great experience for everyone. It's easy to use and it's intuitive to use too. So when you click something, it tells you to do something else. Like it won't just stop there. Like you don't want to just be stuck in one position and then you log out. You want to be able to figure out exactly what you need to do. And it makes the MSP's lives easier too. When the VMS is easy to use, then there's not hiring managers reaching out to you and then you're missing candidates because there's time lost between emails or phone calls or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so that value add of having an easy to use VMS is huge for all aspects.
And it frees up time for the MSP to be able to do other things that they should be doing,
Right.
like finding cost savings for the client and, being able to plan for the future. All of those things, are really important. And it just gives you the time back to do that.
And I'm glad you called that out because that's kind of something as we think about how to build out efficiencies in a technology and everyone's talking about AI and all these different things that we can do. And it like at the heart of it for us in our product development, it's like what mundane task can we take off of the program office? What can we do to free the program office up to be that strategic partner where you're not clicking in a system all day long or doing that analysis yourself? You're able to deliver and help that client make strategic decisions. And I think being that user-friendly tool, and we live in a world where everything's a click away. Like I could decide I want like a new teddy bear and it could be at my door this afternoon. Like it's so, and I think VMS has traditionally lagged a little behind other technologies. And so I think if we can get to a place where that is the norm, where everything is just a click away in this type of technology as well, that is going to serve our clients well.
Yes, I agree.
Absolutely.
All right. So I think kind of one of the things that as we're talking through feedback, how do we analyze feedback? What do we do with it? Do you guys have any like real life examples of like client X had this issue, gave us this feedback, whatever, we kind of resolved it, and this is how, and this is the success story from it?
Yeah, we can talk about one of the biggest things that we've enhanced in the last year is the budget depletion aspect in the professional profile. So this is something that Talent Procure came to us with, something that would make their lives a little bit easier with analysis of budgets for a professional. In our, it wasn't showing an easy way to know how much budget was and how much budget had been used for that professional. So we took some time to talk with Michelle and with other members of her team to find out what the best solution was to show this data in a helpful way, and a way that would also be helpful for a manager that's just glancing and needs to know about how much budget's left for their worker and if they need to ask for an increase for the end of the year. So we definitely talked about it frequently. We broadened our product and come up with an excellent solution. And now we have such a easy to use table where it'll show the contract, how much budget is currently allotted for it, and then how much budget has already been used based on the invoices that have been generated in the system for that worker. So I think it's a pretty good example of how we took your feedback from the client and from something that's useful for you guys too, that will make your lives a little bit easier. Like Laura said, it's a little less clicks, and it is just one click away, really, if you're just navigating to a professional profile. So yeah, I think that was one of the big ones.
I think that's the greatest example of this, honestly. It's something that I personally have not really seen done in a way that you guys were able to deliver this. It's really nice to look at because it's a little circle grid, and you can see exactly how much budget has been used. It's so important for how we manage that specific client, because a lot of times you're managing off of an end date, but to be able to reach out to the manager, know exactly how much budget they have left, know that matches what's in their their internal systems, without us having to log into another system. Having it right there, having it real time is so helpful. And for the manager to be able to also view that is great, because we can just direct them to where to find that and they can see it. And I think our next request was to maybe have that on the emails that get sent to them. So not only are they getting automated emails about their end dates, but they're getting automated emails about how much budget they have left, so that they really fully understand exactly, how much they can use their contingent workers until the end of their assignment. So it's been really, really helpful, and it looks really nice. So we're happy with it, and it makes our day-to-day a lot easier.
And to add to what Michelle just said too, that with our product development, we're not just stopping once we give you something that you asked for. We're also looking for new ways to enhance it. Like you just said, we are looking to add this information to the email notification, or to a dashboard, or to somewhere that's easily accessible for you all to use, and for the manager to use as well. So one thing that we're really trying to do is not just take what you give us and say, here you go, that's it, have a good day. We want to say, okay, let's find the best solution, and let's also build on this so we can create something that works for this program, and continues to build value for the program too.
Absolutely.
I think it's probably your least favorite thing when you come to us like, oh, we did this, we put it into production. We're like, what would be really nice?
I know, right?
That's my favorite. I love it.
We bring Daniel to those calls. We're like,
that's Daniel's thing.
This is one for you. Yeah, he has left the country this week. He was like, I don't want to hear them talk about more product development, more issues they have that need to be resolved. No, I think that really is the case. Is like, and so often I think people that are actually using the technology resign themselves to like, oh, it just doesn't work how I want it to work. And they get in the habit of forming workarounds. and
Yes.
just those conversations are never had. So and I think it's fair to say, like, when we go through that list of wish list items, we're prioritizing them, right? So it's not like we're not going to pretend that like every time Michelle calls us up, we're like, oh yeah, next sprint, that's getting in there. Like we talk through what's the most important things, what's going to make the biggest impact. Everything will get done eventually, but like if there's something that's going to be a big impact, we'll get it into that next sprint and make sure that it's released for them. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're delivering kind of that steady pace of like what's important to you guys.
Yeah, and the reason I bring up, after you put something into production and then we kind of say, oh, that's really great, but it'd be really, really great, and we give you another item, but it's not because it's not working well. It's because we're not afraid to, share that information. Like we think of something new and we're not, we have such a good relationship that we're able to kind of share, even though it's probably very frustrating to hear, oh, that's not, that wasn't good enough for you, but it is. And also we want to make sure that we're always thinking bigger picture. We want to keep thinking like what could be better constantly. And, it does feel like Flentis does respect those, those thoughts a lot of times, which is nice because we can work together on, how it can be better. And we want the VMS to be better and they want the MSP to be better. And we're really better because of each other. So I think it's just so important that we keep that in mind. Like your partners really are, you should really, respect them because they are going to help you look better in front of the client always.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always looking to enhance our system and we're always looking for your feedback so we can make your jobs easier. That's because I know what it's like to be in a program and I know how hard it can be when you're waiting when a stakeholder is asking for something and you need to get it right away, and or a manager just needs help with a simple task like submitting a candidate or approving a candidate or anything. Really makes a difference when we're on the same page and when we're creating a system and creating a program that works for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really funny that like, and it kind of happens every time we get together. It's like, Michelle, you say like, oh, you guys are probably like hate it when we come back with more things. Like we love that. We love it. Like, that's what we want. And that's like what we enjoy about our jobs. And then we like give something to you guys and we're like, oh, they're probably so annoyed with us. And it's like, no, you guys love what you do as well. Like we're in the roles that we belong in. And I think that's so important in a partnership too.
Yes, agreed.
All right. So looking ahead, kind of how do we see the evolution of MSP VMS partnerships? What does that look like kind of compared to historically, or how can we grow, push the limits, push the boundaries on this type of partnership?
Yeah, so I think for us, it's really looking for a symbiotic relationship between an MSP and a VMS. So having that open line of communication, having collaboration to make sure that both sides look good, having those conversations weekly, monthly, whatever, that bring up any issues, problems, and also solutions. So move the program forward in the best way and provide value to the end client, because that's what it's really about, is providing them with cost saving solutions or with their data analytics and all of those types of things. That's what we both want to provide to your end clients. So I think that's such a big part that's missing from VMS and MSP symbiotic relationship, where we're relying on each other to make each other look good.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think that, an MSP just cannot be successful without a good VMS. Like it has to support the goals and the values of the client and of the MSP. It all has to work together because, you are only as good, you can only provide as much service as your, to your client by yourself, but you have to have an MSP or a VMS that, that mirrors, your values. It's just so important because you're only as good as your VMS's, allowing you to be, because that really is what the client sees most. Maybe not the high level, the client sponsor, but the hiring managers, the workers, they're seeing the VMS. They think the VMS is the MSP. So it's just so important that you are connecting. They think Flentis, sometimes they'll say, oh, Flentis, like, no, that's just the system you're using. It's not it's not the MSP, but that's what they see more. So it is a reflection directly of the MSP is how the VMS is working. So it's so important that you are building that relationship and, that you're able to be successful together.
Absolutely. I do want to call out, I have a couple more questions left, but I do want to call out that we'll do the Q&A after that. So if anyone in the audience has questions, go ahead and throw them in the comments and we will get to them. This next question is something that I've asked at the end of every webinar that we've done. Simply just from both of you, if the audience only remembers one thing or has one takeaway from this conversation that we've had, what do you want them to take away? And we'll start with you, Michelle.
Okay. I would say that you're not doing your client justice if you are saying that you just can't support their requests. I think that that's really important to be able to have that relationship with your VMS and be able to look bigger picture and, try to make those things happen for your client, because it's just going to make everyone more successful. So I think those partnerships you have with your VMS is just extremely important. And like you said earlier, Laura, like don't create workarounds because your partners aren't able to support your needs and values and your clients. It's so important that you're able to work together on that. So I think that's my takeaway is think bigger picture, push for those things to happen. And if they're not able to, if your VMS is not able to support, what you're trying to do, then, maybe you need to look elsewhere.
Absolutely.
For me, I think it's mostly communication. It really just boils down to that communication with early in a program implementation, getting those needs from a client, setting those expectations, and creating a product that works. All of that comes from communication between the MSP and the VMS. So I think that is what my biggest takeaway is from this conversation, and it's going to continue forward. And I'm hoping that other programs also use that as their takeaway as well, since it is such a big portion that it can be missing from this industry, is just communicating with your VMS, with your MSP, and making sure everyone's on the same page, because you should have the same goals, and those goals should be to provide an excellent customer experience and provide value to that end client.
Absolutely. All right. We will go ahead and jump into the Q&A. If there are any questions, we'll throw them up on the screen here, and then we can kind of see who's the best person to answer those. So the first one here: how do you personally ensure transparency with clients when things aren't going as planned, especially if their expectations need to be realigned? It's a good question.
Yeah, I think I go back to, bringing your partners in early on those conversations. So, we have had experiences like this in the past with some of our clients, specifically with Flentis and with our current clients. And what happens is, with bringing your partners in early and them, not only the client having the trust of you, but also the partners that you're working with, you're able to kind of change the expectations and realign them easier, because they know everyone. They've heard what the VMS can do. They've heard, kind of how things work. So when you kind of have an insight on how things are working on the back end, it helps you understand when something doesn't go as planned and you do have to reset the expectations, because they get it a little bit more, And so I think just being very transparent with your clients in the beginning, bringing the correct partners in and having those conversations, then when something goes wrong later, it's not completely destroying their trust in you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sabrina, anything to add to that one?
I completely agree with Michelle. I think that having those early expectations really brings a lot of it makes it easier in those kinds of situations for sure.
Absolutely. Yep. All right, next question here. Given your MSP background, how does the MSP mindset influence your approach to client relationships in the VMS world? Sabrina, I think that one is for you.
Yeah, so I think with having an MSP background, it really opens me up to knowing the problems that come up frequently, knowing the issues that hiring managers have, knowing the issues that suppliers have, and those frequent types of things that come up, so I can be prepared for those issues and also provide a little bit more of an expert take on any solutions that might need to come across. So if we're discussing something with the talent procure team and we're have a wish list item or a issue that's happening that needs to be resolved, using my MSP background, I might be able to provide a little more insight than someone who only has a technology background. Because I've lived it, I've worked in those types of things, I've used other systems, and I know a little bit about what they're looking for with those solutions.
Perfect. All right, last question here. Is NPS the only KPI you rely on to measure the effectiveness of a CW program, or are there other key metrics you consider essential for tracking success and client satisfaction? Michelle, you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I think the NPS score is definitely not the only KPI that you would use to measure it. I mean, we do a lot of internal client, metrics. So we are, some more like hard facts, how quickly they're getting candidates in, and how much cost savings, for that year, like those types of things. But then we are doing those. We're doing those manager surveys, and we're doing the worker surveys, and we are talking to our client sponsors and doing quarterly reviews with them and getting their feedback. So a lot of those are more kind of soft numbers, I would say, but we're definitely not only using the NPS score as the only way to track this effectiveness. So I just think keeping that line of communication open is really important with your client, because you can really hear what they're saying and not just rely on a score necessarily. So I think that that's really important, showing the actual numbers of what's happening with the, with the client, how quickly you're able to get them those candidates, how long those candidates or those workers are staying on assignment, how happy they are on assignment. All of those things are really important to understand, how effective you're being with your client.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up the webinar here, I have one last question for both of you. It's my holiday edition wrap-up question. What is the one thing coming up with the holidays that you guys are most looking forward to?
For me, I would say just spending time with my my nephews and my nieces. They're all such fun ages right now, and they're very specific on what they want for Christmas. So it's really fun to go, get those gifts for them, and it's really exciting to be able to give those to them on Christmas Day. So that's what I'm looking most forward to.
Love that.
That's awesome.
Sabrina?
I think for me, one of my favorite traditions that my now husband and I started was every Christmas Eve, we watch White Christmas, and we make homemade pizzas, and we just sit on the couch and enjoy the evening. And I think that's one of my favorite things now, and I look forward to it every year.
I love that.
Love it. Absolutely. Well, that is all we have today. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. And Sabrina, of course, thank you for being here as well. If you guys in the audience have any questions that didn't get answered, or just want to start conversation, please feel free to reach out to myself, Michelle, Sabrina on LinkedIn, via email, however you can get a hold of us. Other than that, everyone have a happy holidays, and we will see you later.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.